Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Congressman Gil Cisneros. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me once again.
Thanks for having me, Brittany.
Congressman, I would love to get your perspective over what we've seen unfold in Los Angeles over the past couple of days. So let's start on Friday, where we saw protests break out over workplace raids by ICE. The scene on the ground by some over the past couple of days have been called largely peaceful, with pockets of violence or chaos here and there. LA Police Chief Jim McDonnell said over the weekend this, quote, "In recent days, many protests across the city have been peaceful," before adding that law enforcement must respond firmly, quote, "when peaceful demonstrations devolve into acts of vandalism or violence." He also said that over the weekend, by Sunday, things have gotten increasingly more violent. There have been images and videos of skirmishes between protesters and police, cars lit on fire, and even a video of someone riding a motorcycle directly into a group of police officers. So to start the conversation, can you describe exactly what's been going on the ground in Southern California?
Look, they're trying to, I think, portray this as, especially on the right wing media, that there are riots going on, that there's unrest. The president himself said he was sending in the National Guard to stop the looting. None of that is occurring. None of that is happening. As you said, right, most of the protests, the vast majority of the protests have been peaceful demonstrators that are out there. Now, there are always some bad apples. There's some agitators out there that want to create chaos, and they see this as an opportunity to go out and confront law enforcement and create havoc for whatever their cause may be. But, the majority of people there are doing it peacefully and they're doing it right. And even the LAPD that I saw earlier today put out a statement that the National Guard and the Marines are not needed.
Let's talk about that, because as of now, President Trump deployed in total 4,700 service members when you think of the troops as Marines and the National Guard members. What do you make of that number?
Well, right now, currently, from what we heard from the Adjutant General from California is they've only actually received 300 National Guard, soldiers that have kind of moved into the LA area. I think the Marines were on their way. We heard there was a total of 700 Marines that were making their way towards Los Angeles. But they still have the ability to call up those other. At first it was 2,000 in total, so they had like another 1,700, or I think it was 1,600 that they could still call up. And then they, went and asked for another 2,000. Gavin Newsom, our governor, sent out a picture yesterday. The Marines aren't doing anything but them sleeping on the ground, right? They have nothing to do. The guardsmen that are there are mostly just standing around. This is not needed. They are not needed. The president is trying to create a confrontation between the people of California, these agitators probably, and the soldiers that are there, whether they be guardsmen or the Marines that are there, to allow him to go to bring more in, and for whatever reason to invoke to create martial law or whatever his goal may be. But he is fully responsible for this situation right now. Law enforcement did not ask for his support. The mayor of Los Angeles did not ask for his support. The governor did not ask for his support, but he went over them and did this anyway because he is trying to create chaos. He is trying to invoke confrontation. For whatever reason, he wants California. He thinks he needs to bend California to his rule, but we're not going to go for that.
To that point, this is a really largely unprecedented move against a governor's wishes, the sitting president deploying the National Guard anyway. Governor Gavin Newsom, LA Mayor Karen Bass essentially said that the situation was under control. Do you think before President Trump called in the National Guard, do you think that they were handling the situation well?
It was being handled. Again, there was no request for services from the National Guard. And if Governor Newsom felt that the National Guard was needed, he could have called them up on his own, but they weren't. Los Angeles and the other surrounding cities there did not request any assistance from the governor as far as being in order to have him activate the National Guard. The situation was being handled by local law enforcement, the police departments around the Southern California area, the sheriffs, some CHP came in to help as well to control traffic, but nothing like this was ever, needed in order to bring in the National Guard. Look, this isn't even, they are blowing it. I was actually watching Fox News earlier today just to kind of see what they were talking about it. And they make it sound as if like the city's on fire, it's being burnt down, riots everywhere. They keep showing the same images of a couple of vehicles being burnt down or being burnt. Um, this is kind of comical, but true, right? This isn't even close to like if the Lakers had won the NBA championship, that celebration was probably 10 times bigger than what's actually going on right now. That's happened in the past.
And to that point, the National Guard was deployed in LA. The last time they were deployed in LA was for riots in 1992, so over 30 years ago. And even someone, I guess I just had on, who is critical of Governor Newsom's leadership, said that what's happening in LA right now does not equal what was happening in LA back in 1992. And Governor
Not,
Gavin
yeah,
Newsom is,
it's
you're
not even
agreeing.
close. It is not even close to what the riots that were going on, the looting, the destruction of property, where the National Guard was needed, and that actually caused President Bush to invoke the Insurrection Act. We're not even anywhere near that. And so, again, Donald Trump is just trying to create chaos. He's trying to, incite confrontation between, the citizens and the military for whatever. And I don't know what his end game is. A lot of people are talking about how he is just trying to distract from how bad everything is going, right? From his one big, bloated bill, how that's not really going well. How the tariffs, he said he was going to have all these tariff deals. He's gotten one. He hasn't ended the war in Ukraine. Uh, Gaza is still going on. All these things that he said he was going to take care of, none of this had happened. I mean, he's even destroying the Kennedy Center right now, and asking for foreign, the Qatar to come in and bail him out there, just like they gave him a plane. He has enriched himself by $3 billion while since the 5 months that he's been in office. Corruption running rampant in his administration, and they are saying this is and really this is just a cover to kind of distract attention from all that stuff to just put it on this.
To that point, last week there was a lot of blowback between the relationship and the falling out, rather, between Elon Musk and President Donald Trump. And Elon Musk's criticism of the Big Beautiful Bill really opened a can of worms for Republicans to go after that bill as well, especially when it comes to the deficit. Immigration is one of those issues, I think one of the only issues right now where President Trump has a higher approval rating when it comes to his handling of that. So you're saying you think A, he's blowing what's happening in LA out of proportion right now, and B, you think it's because to distract from that negative press surrounding him last week.
Correct. Look, the first thing is we got to stop calling it the one big beautiful bill. There's nothing beautiful about that bill.
It's the title. I did not make that up.
I know that's the title, but we got to call it like what it is. I call it the one big billionaire bailout because that's what it is, right? It's giving tax cuts to billionaires. It's taking away, healthcare from millions of individuals. It's taking food out of the mouths of kids. It is not creating. It's not doing anything for the middle class, for the working people of this country. So we have to stop calling it what the actual title is and actually talk about the reality of it, right? It is big, bloated, and ugly. Um, but yeah, that is the one area right now, I think, where, with immigration, where the polling is saying he's actually succeeding. But when you dive in deeper to it, right, he is actually going around telling people, and his messaging is right, we're getting all the violent criminals out. That's who we're going after. But once the reality comes out and they start talking about who they're really going after, um, people quickly change their mind. They don't like the fact that there's no due process, right? And what's going on here in Southern California, and it is, it's in LA, but it is the surrounding area, LA County and other areas. It's also moved into um, San Bernardino and Orange County as well, to where they're going after individuals, but they're not going after violent criminals. They are just rounding up people off the streets. In my district, they saw some people going to lunch on their lunch break, and they went over there and confronted them and ended up arresting some of them, right? They're not going after violent criminals. They're going after kids. I mean, they arrested a 10-year-old boy, last week, separated from his father. You know, what risk to security, right? Is this 10-year-old kid who's like a fourth grader who actually went to school with my cousin's kids. But these are the things that they're doing, right? And once that comes out, then the results change, right? Then people don't agree with them. People don't like the fact that there's no due process, that they're just rounding up people off the street, that they're not going for violent criminals, and that they're, arresting kids and taking them away from their parents.
And now you see the situation in California. There are protesters not happy with these ICE raids. And Governor Gavin Newsom, yourself, other California lawmakers have said that President Trump, by sending in the National Guard, by sending in Marines, he's unnecessarily turning up that temperature. He's inflaming the situation. The police chief in LA said that there has been more violence when it came to over the weekend. Do you think President Trump, by sending in the National Guard, do you think that he is inflaming the situation? Do you think that that's responsible for more violence that we're seeing and these violent images that are coming out of this protest?
Well, that's 100% that is what he's doing. And listen to his rhetoric. He put out like a post, I think, a couple days ago, talking about how Los Angeles has been taken over, that there's an invasion going on in Los Angeles, and he's going in there to clean it up. He is provoking this situation. He is making it worse. Sending in the National Guard, sending in the Marines, is just making it more dangerous for everybody. These Marines haven't received the training to deal with crowds, and really, I don't think the National Guard has really got the training that they need. They're not law enforcement. This is not what they deal with, right? They are trained. They're military individuals trained, for combat. And you put them in a situation where now all of a sudden they're feeling threatened and they're pressured. Their natural reflexes are going to take over, and that's to shoot and to attack. And that's just going to cause chaos and havoc. And somebody's, this is just a big accident waiting to happen. And he is provoking it. And it's going to be his responsibility if something does go bad.
And to that point, I mean, in your opinion, what position does this put the LAPD in? Because as of right now, you have these troops coming in. They're tasked with guarding federal buildings. Do you think that this is too many cooks in the kitchen in this sense? I mean, what does that really look like?
Look, the LAPD right now is handling the situation in Los Angeles. The other police departments around the surrounding area, they're handling the situation. The National Guard is not doing anything. They're pretty much, as I said earlier, they're just standing around in front of these federal buildings, really just kind of twiddling their thumbs, not really doing anything, right? But I will tell you, their threat is, you know, or what are they going to use the guard for, right? Are they going to try and use them? Are they going to deputize them? Are they going to try and take them out on ICE raids? Are they going to try and use them for security for ICE agents as they go on their missions? And by doing that, that is really going to provoke confrontations out there, right? And it's not needed.
And you're seeing other protests spilling out to other cities. And as you know, Governor Newsom suing President Trump over deploying both the National Guard and the Marines. He called the actions, quote, an unmistakable step toward authoritarianism and a, quote, blatant abuse of power. Is there anything right now in your conversation with members of Congress that Congress can do right now about the situation, or that Congress is planning to do?
Well, look, unfortunately, we have a Republican majority, right, who is line in step with President Trump, who goes along with his rhetoric, because they think a lot of them are afraid that he doesn't, that he may have somebody run against them if they're, not doing his bidding right now, right? They're afraid to stand up to him, and they don't have the backbone to do that. And that's very unfortunate. We as Californians are rallying. We are working. We are standing there. We are supporting our local elected officials, our local governments, and our constituents out there, and we'll continue to do that. Um, the other thing that happened this weekend too, when I was in California, was, by law, I am allowed to go to ICE detention facilities and unannounced, be allowed in, inspect them, see what's going on, ask questions. I went to the Adelanto ICE processing center in Adelanto, California on Sunday with two of my colleagues. They locked the gate and would not let us in. They wouldn't even answer our questions. They said they were going to send somebody out, and nobody ever came out. Um, but right now there is no respect for the law. There is no due process, and this is really something that we should all be concerned about, right? That it doesn't matter, what your status is, right? Uh, citizen, non-citizen, green card holder, whatever it may be. The fact that they are have no disregard for the due process of law is a threat to all of us. And if they're doing it to some, they will do it to all. Um, when I was at that processing center, a gentleman and I think, and his niece came out and they were looking for his nephew. They hadn't heard, he got arrested 3 days ago. They had not heard from him. No call, no nothing. And they had no idea where he was. They were going around to different facilities trying to find him and locate him. They're arresting people. They're not assigning them, alien numbers as they're supposed to, which is supposed to be done once they're arrested. There's just really no respect for the law and procedures of this country right now. And again, if they're doing it to them, they'll do it to anybody.
Congressman, to that point, I mean, what do you make or what do you think is missing then from the national conversation, really, when it comes to immigration? Because as you said at the beginning of this conversation, that most Americans are for tougher immigration policies until you peel back the layers and then you start talking about specific stories. And then people say, well, not in that case or not that case. Then you're talking about due process. Then when you're looking at LA specifically, I mean, depending on where A, you get your news, B, what video you're watching, the LA situation looks very different, right? Because if you're listening to certain news outlets, it's mostly peaceful with these pockets of violence, pockets of chaos. If you're looking at other places, there's videos of complete chaos, cars on fire, and everything in between. I mean, what do you think is really missing as someone from California from this entire conversation?
Like the bad part is, right, and actually one of my colleagues made this analogy earlier that uh, nobody wants to cover the safe landing of the plane, right, that landed safely. Um, they're never going to cover the peaceful demonstrations. They're never going to cover anything that's not going on right here in the media, right? It's like my wife used to work in television news. She would talk about this all the time, right? They want the stuff that's, the dirty stuff, the stuff that's burning, the stuff that's inflamed, the craziness that's going on. That's what brings people to the channels to watch them. And that's really what I think is going after there, right? I mean, we're seeing the same images over and over and over, right? That is kind of played and replayed and replayed. But, I think we need to focus on, and it would be great if the media could do this, right? That things are, relatively peaceful there, right? And the National Guard is not needed. And, the Marines are not needed. And, just by having them there is invoking confrontation and it's a possibility for things to get worse.
Then what would be your message to President Trump then when it comes to this situation? Just what would be that message?
Be stand down, send the National Guardsmen home. Some of them have been, with the fires that were going on in California. Some of them haven't been home for like a long time. They've been kind of out there patrolling those areas, keeping those neighborhood safes from looters and possible people that could come there. Um, they want to go home. They want some time with their families. Send them home. Send the Marines home. This whole thing was done without any thought. No logistics kind of procedures or process was put into this. They sent the Marines out here with no food. They have no place to stay. It was totally ridiculous. Send them all home. They're not needed. The situation is in control. by local law enforcement, and really get out this thing, right? California is never going to bend to your will. You just have to agree to disagree, and be okay with that.
Congressman, I really appreciate your time today. I always appreciate our conversations. You are welcome back anytime. Thanks again for joining me.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Take care.